Hey everybody, DeathsStalker here. So another continuation of my upgrade my RC51 because it's winter and I can't ride it series. And this time I'm going to finish the Brembo brake upgrade. So if you remember from last year, I did a video series where I replaced the stock Honda Nissan calipers and EBC rotors I put on my bike to upgrade to a full Brembo system with monoblock calipers. And after riding it for a full season and actually enjoying it, I decided to complete it by adding a Brembo rear brake caliper to replace the stock Nissan. So I decided to go one step further by getting an actual official HRC lower caliper mounting bracket so I can mount my caliper down low, just like they use in World Superbike and the Suzuka 8-hour race. I've also decided to step up the caliper to a higher finished caliper. And the main reason I decided to do this was because this is going to be hanging down low. It's going to get a lot dirtier than the one that currently resides up here, and having the higher polish finish, it'll be easier to clean the caliper and keep it clean. So the first thing I have to do is I need to get the brake fluid out of this brake line. Now I've got an aftermarket line and it will work on the Brembo caliper, so I don't really have to replace this line. But if you're using the stock rubber lines that the bike came with, it might not be able to reach all the way down here. The first step, of course, is I have to get to the master cylinder and take the cap off it so I can start the process of draining the fluid. To access the master cylinder, you're going to have to get the whole rear seat off the bike so you can actually loosen this cap off. And you want to be careful you don't get any dirt in here, because that'll require extra cleaning. So we'll put that in a safe place. We'll start the brake draining process. So the first thing I always do is I use my 8mm wrench to get it on the bleed screw. Make sure you get the hose on firmly. Crack it open and just start pumping the fluid out. Now normally what you'd be doing is watching to make sure you're not getting air bubbles in here, but since I'm going to replace all the fluid, it's not a big deal. Okay, now we've got as much of the fluid as we can get out of here. So what we're going to do is just tighten this back up again. No matter what you do, you're always going to have some fluid in here. Try to get as much of the fluid out of here as possible. So I'm going to take a 14mm wrench and loosen this off. And no matter what, there is going to be fluid leaking out of this. Just put that out of the way. Now, I'm just going to bend the hose up here out of the way, and what will happen is the fluid will drop to the lowest level, so there won't be any leakage in there. Okay, now the next thing we do is we're going to take the wheel off, because we have to swap out these brackets. This is not a difficult job, it just takes a little bit of fiddling a bit. That's out. Just put that down there like that. And that's the wheel. So I don't know if the camera can pick it up, but the disc, if I run my fingers on both sides here, is actually fairly worn. This is the original disc for the bike. So I decided to pick up a brand new Brembo standard rotor for the RC51. Surprisingly, it was actually cheaper than buying a factory one. And as always, just 4 bolts, you just have to loosen them. That's 16 years of road wear, because I think these are the original rotors. And these are the brand new ones. Okay, the one thing I've quickly discovered is this is a 2-person job, and right now I'm by myself. So this particular bracket has to be held in place when you go to drop this drop this wheel back in place. So I've got the axle in backwards just to help support it, and a zip tie just to hold it tight where it's supposed to go. Because if not, as you know, with RC51s, you have a bushing out on this side, a bushing on the opposite side, plus you have the cush drive in the bike. And anybody who's ever put wheels on, the back wheel on and off on these bikes, knows that these parts just live to fall off as you're trying to put them back in. So this is my solution. The thing I have to do is get the chain out of the way. We'll see if I can actually get this in one take on the camera, because this took a fair bit of time to figure this sucker out. So I'm actually holding both bushings in place, and what do you know? It actually, first try. You don't want to know how many times it took me to figure this out. So I'm going to pull the scissor jack back this way to keep the wheel from trying to roll off, and we can actually get back to finishing the brake job. So that twist tie is a lifesaver, because there was just no way to hold this in place as I'm trying to slide this up there with all the bushings and stuff, as doing the typical Honda thing, trying to fall off as you're putting them in. So now we're all set. New brake disc. Everything's turning. There's lots of clearance here. Now there's one thing I have to check, and it came with the instructions with this bracket. And I'll bring it over here and show it to you on camera. And that is, they warn you about your, depending on what caliper you're using, okay, because it actually works with Brembos, Nissan, Burlington, etc. There might be a slight offset for the hub, and your pads might have a slight offset protruding from the brake discs. And what you have to do is, if you do, you have to remove the unnecessary brake material. The reason you're going to have to remove that is brake pads move a little bit. And if you start wearing away this part of the brake pad over time, there might come to a situation where you go to apply the brakes and the brake pads might move a millimeter, and you might get into the section that hasn't been moved, and you might think you're braking, but you're not actually braking with proper force. So you're braking on like just a sliver of brake pad. So they want you to take that off. So we're going to see if this is a problem with the Brembos or not. The first thing we do is slide these guys in and put the bolts on so you can see. take this picture so I can see what I got here. So what I've done is I just put a little mark on the caliper with a marker. Now it's hard to see, but I'm actually using my old caliper so you can see. Putting it at the mark, you can see that the rotor is actually running right out to the edge of the brake pad, so there's not going to be a problem with that clearance issue, which is good to know. So now I'm going to put this back on and do the bolts up. So just do these up and torquing them down once I'm all finished. So now the next part is to install the brake line. The nice thing is Brembo actually supplied the crush washers to install the brake lines. And we're back. So if you notice by the cut there, this brake hose was just a little bit too short. And I actually thought this thing would have been okay because there was a big loop up here that's always been there because the cable was longer than the factory hoses. But live and learn. So what we had to do was replace it with, I had to quickly go on Amazon and order a braided stainless steel line because that's all I could get. And this is a 65 centimeter brake line. And this will actually fit and still have enough slack to make this thing work. And now we're back to where we were technically a couple days ago, because it took me a couple days to get a hose, and then we had a snowstorm, and we've had some incredibly cold weather. And right now, if the audio can pick it up, we are having a windstorm to make it even colder outside. And this is the bracket that holds the brake line as a guide in place. Oops, let's guide the brake line to where it has to go before I start putting stuff where it's not supposed to go. The important thing right now is to make sure this is all threaded in properly so that it's actually going correctly, because the last thing you want to do is cross threads in important braking components, which can get very expensive very fast. Just got to find that little piece of rubber, which is going to go here. And this is just a little hold down clamp. This one just goes over the rubber grommet. Now there is no interference. The line actually is well clear of everything. And with this thing set up properly, it should not be a problem. And this one here is just easy to get a wrench in here. Okay, so now it's time to put brake fluid in, and again, always only use new brake fluid. Wow. We're just gonna Fill this up and slowly start pumping this, if you can hear this over the wind. And while we're pumping this, we're looking for leaks in the lines. So as you can see, the brakes are pretty good now. They're locking really well. I'm still getting a few air bubbles here and there, and that's not unusual. You always tend to get air bubbles in the lines whenever you replace them, especially when you add calipers or even master cylinders. So what I've always found, and this is from racing and also working on my own bikes over time, fill the brake lines, bleed them as best you can, get them good and solid, top it up, come back the next day if you can, or come back an hour later, because what will happen is all these little microscopic air bubbles will move themselves up and collect together, and then it's very easy to bleed them. You usually come back, within an hour or a day or so. It's like 2 or 3 cycles of putting the pressure on, releasing the bleed screw, and you'll get your air bubbles out really quickly. So that's what I'm always do. That's what I can suggest to you. My bike's not going anywhere because right now it's the winter. If the audio is picking up the wind, you know that it's minus 14, not counting the wind chill right now. And always remember to get as much of the fluid as possible back at the bottom part of the container. So that is really, really nice. There we go. And one Brembo race caliper setup on an RC51. So I'll leave links to the descriptions of the caliper and so forth. The hose I got off of Amazon. It's a 65 millimeter. This is a braided steel line. I'm running anti-M. Are you finished? Okay. I'm using the stock master cylinder. Right now, I don't really see the need for switching over to a Brembo. I might down the road. If I do, there'll be another video. But I think the Brembo brake calipers themselves are going to be the improvement that I'm looking for. The bracket, I got that on eBay from an eBay seller who may or may not have a store. I heard rumors that actually he was creating a store. What I will do, I'll put the exact description for the part, which is like it's called HRC. I'll put it right here, and I'll just put that in the description. So if you just copy that from the description and put it into eBay, chances are it'll pop up. There are other people that make them. There was a place in the U.S. you can buy it years ago. I don't know if that website's even still active anymore. It was unfortunately on 2 computers ago, so I don't really have it saved. The Brembo caliper, I got that from Omnia Racing, and again, I'll just put in the description what make and model it is. Basically, it's a set size. As long as you get that particular size, it'll fit on the bracket. If you were to get a different type of bracket, you would have to get whatever size span for the bolts are. And the rear brake rotor is, of course, a Brembo replacement unit for an RC51. So if you have any questions, put them in the comments. The whole job, excluding waiting for a brake line, is probably 45 minutes to an hour, depending on your skill level. It's not difficult. It's a little fiddly. Again, the zip tie trick I showed you, I wasted a good 35 minutes trying to get this wheel back on and hold everything in place, and I finally just got annoyed and got a zip tie, and it took 2 or 3 tries to get the right positioning. And if you look at the video where I put the zip tie through, And it doesn't even have to be super tight. It just has to be sort of sitting there holding it in place. It's like having a friend hold it while you put the wheel in, without the friend worrying about losing his fingers. So again, you got any questions, put them in the comments. There's more upgrades coming. DeathsStalker signing off.